And here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to another recording session for the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Your crew tonight, Robyn Sandoval, Charlie Cook, Rob Morse, and myself. We're going to be interviewing John Petrolino, who is already standing by, so we'll get through the personal news segment fairly quickly. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. Obviously, a lot of stuff that has happened in the news today, so we've got a lot of stuff to get covered. I've got to get social media hooked up so you can be part of the show as well. As soon as I find, come on, Facebook, there we go. As soon as I get everything hooked up. The one thing that is annoying about Facebook is they will not let me hook up social media until the podcast actually goes live, which is really, really annoying. Every other social media platform lets me set everything up and hook up social media beforehand. Facebook makes you wait. And so I have to be doing 3 things as I'm live, which is no bueno. So anyway, let's see here. Have we got, let me look at show notes. Have we got, yeah, Rob, I think you've been doing the yeoman's work and writing everything out. Looks like everything's written for the show open. So are we ready for me to push buttons and have Mass bring us in?
Let's make it so.
All right. Here we go. Masada Ayub, everybody, in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're recording this one on Monday, April the 11th, 2022. My name is Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we talk with John Petrolino about the Biden administration's word salad that they issued today, talking about homemade firearms and violence in Democrat-controlled cities.
I'm Robyn Sandoval, and we'll talk about Hawaii denying a sailor his gun permit because the sailor missed being home.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about more ghost gun nonsense from the land of Lincoln. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 620 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, I should probably take that timer off up there. Hey, Rob, it's you've been here 2 weeks in a row with us. I don't think you can wear the red shirt anymore. I think you've graduated to the blue shirt. Isn't that what the senior officers wear?
That's what this is all about. I appreciate it.
So you were your last. What's been on since the last time you're on the air with Polite Society, man?
It's a wonderfully boring week for me. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. I joined you at the Weekly Bullet, and I carried every day. Robyn, you've been busier than you can describe. What's up?
Well, I was fortunate to be on Self-Defense Gun Stories with you. I also did an interview with our friends at Gun Owners Radio. That was always really fun to visit with those guys. But yes, my life has just been 100% pretty much focused on our national conference. A Girl and a Gun's 10th annual national conference is coming up in just 2 weeks. So I'm going to have about 800 people converging on the city of Grand Junction, Colorado. So everything on my desk is, if you could see it, it's pretty crazy right now, but everything's focused on that training conference coming up. How about you, Charlie?
Thanks, Robyn. I had a student this past week doing an NRA Basics of Pistol Shooting class because they want to get their Connecticut permit, and Connecticut requires that you do live fire. A live fire or a course that has live fire as part of the curriculum. And I also did a show with Matt Mallory. We did a live show on our Facebook and YouTube. And Kevin Dixie, also known as KD, was our guest. And guys like him, hearing him talk and talking with him is always an education. Paul, today's a great day for you.
Well, of sorts, yeah. 1 year ago, it really wasn't. 1 year ago today, I was sitting down to talk with my wife, Susan, at breakfast, and all of a sudden, I couldn't talk. Quite literally, the thoughts would form in my head, but my mouth wouldn't make the right noises. Turns out what was going on was I was having a stroke. And long story short, it's been an interesting year. About a month after the stroke, I ended up having a heart attack. Kind of through Polite Society podcast and the Bullet and its various iterations into a bit of a spin. I got to say, God bless Alan and Julianne and everybody at the Second Amendment Foundation. They've stuck with me. They believed in me. God bless everybody who's helped me out on the Bullet and the fantastic people I have here helping me out with the Polite Society podcast. And an absolute God bless you to my wife, who how do I say this? Everybody knows the words "in sickness and in health." I don't think anybody knew, or anybody could have known, what Susan was signing up for when she said "in sickness and in health," because this last year with me, for her, really has been that test. And she has absolutely stand fast beside me through that. And today I sit before you an absolutely blessed person, because I have so many fantastic friends, and I'm humbled to be with so many blessings with my wife and the good friends and family that I have. So that's and that just, it hit me today that today was the anniversary that I'm kind of lucky to be here. So
I would bet some of our listeners have put up some social media comments about that. You're brave enough to put them up?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just real quickly, only one has come through so far, but just Georgie says stay healthy, and I'm doing my best. Susan is really helping me along with that. So, and I do want to remind everybody, occasionally the software does have issues picking up either YouTube or Facebook commentary. So you can, if you have a Twitter account, hashtag PS Podcast will get you through, and it gets you through quicker and more reliably than any other form. So let's do this. We've got John Petrolino, who you guys can't see him, but I can. He is so patiently waiting for us to get to him, and we've got a lot to talk about. So let's do this. I want to hear from the good folks at ACLDN. We'll get back here and we'll talk with John about what is going on with the White House and this ghost gun stuff they're trying to push down our throats. And we'll be back with that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and bring in, I want to, first of all, this is our interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. And John, I'm going to say, man, flattery will get you everywhere. We've got a comment John just put up in the YouTube side. We love you and are blessed to have you in your lives and in our lives. And John, I got to say, the feeling is mutual, man. You are, this man is a absolute wizard at research. How he comes up with the research he does, I am baffled by. I thought I was pretty good at research. This guy is me times 10. John, I believe both you and I were paying attention at the, I think Biden had all of his voters there on the west lawn of the White House and did a presentation on on ghost guns today. I don't have the clips loaded up here like I did when you were with me here about an hour ago on the Bullet broadcast, but he made some pretty big whoppers of statements today, man.
Yeah, it's pretty egregious. So we know that we are dealing with executive overreach. I mean, there's no doubt about that they are trying to legislate through the executive, and I'm surprised we haven't even heard a flurry of lawsuits already filed. There's probably tomorrow we'll wake up to lawsuits that were filed today, because what they're trying to do is, just executive overreach. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the document, but it's well over 300 pages, and that's what we're supposed to sift through. And I know there's comment in there as well. And if you read some of these new definitions or altered definitions, it's pretty crazy. Did you have a chance to look through any of it at all, Paul? It kind of hit us in the middle of the day when we were going about our lives.
I was trying to get through. It takes me a little bit to get the clips off of the whitehouse.gov site, get them into my broadcast software, get them edited down. So, no, I was busy trying to get that for broadcast.
So one of the things I picked up, and I printed out some stuff anticipating we would talk about this tonight, for definitions for firearm, it says the term shall include a weapon parts kit that's designed to or may readily be completed, assembled, restored, or otherwise converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. And I believe this is the finalized rule. And like I said, I didn't have a chance to sift through all 300 plus pages of this, so it was to cherry pick through to find just these definitions was difficult enough. But they also define, and there was something about the clips that you played earlier on the Daily Bullet, and the deputy to the DOJ making her statements about how easy this is and people can do this at their kitchen table. And I think Sleepy Joe said something about that as well, that you could use a hand drill. And so their definition of readily, and it yet remains to be seen if this will or won't affect 3D printed firearms. It's because there's nuance to everything, right? And words matter. And granted, these words aren't law, so we have to deal with what we've been served right now. But readily, they say it's a process, action, or physical state that is fairly or reasonably efficient, quick, and easy but not necessarily the most efficient, speediest, or easiest process, action, or physical state. I mean, I don't know about you, but I had to go, Like I don't get that.
That's getting very close to. That depends on what your definition of is.
Right, exactly. So this is like the nuance to the language in this document, and it says, with respect to the classification of firearms, factors relevant in making the determination. And they have a list of factors. How long does it take to finish? How easy is it to do it? How much expertise or knowledge or skill is required to do it? What equipment or tools was required? Parts availability. How much does it cost? To what extent, does the subject of the process must be changed to finish it? Feasibility, would it damage or destroy it when you're trying to do it? There's like a whole bunch of malarkey here, and I think we're going to get a lot of material here over the next couple of days about this. Rob?
John, we've been here before. The law, there is established law about homemade firearms. You don't have to complete every part of a firearm to be considered the manufacturer. People make their own cars. You don't have to make every part. People make their own airplanes. People make their own computers. Well, cars and airplanes and firearms are registered. Computers are not. They used a number that as long as you did 20% of the work, you were the manufacturer. We had then 80% lowers, meaning by the time you did that, there was a remaining 20% of the work that you'd accomplished. The DOJ, the ATF had already established that standard. We've been living with it. These new homemade firearms continue to abide by that standard. The problem is they don't like that standard, and now they'd like to change it. John, do you agree?
I do want to change it, and I think they're scrambling because is this a loophole? The whole firearms being built at home, is that some sort of a loophole? And to Paul's point from earlier, saying a lot of people on the pro-freedom side are like, yes, we do want to build our own firearms. Aside from the hobbyist aspects of it, aside from the technical aspects, from the perspective of, well, this is my firearm that, yes, it does not have a serial number. So this is a good thing when you're dealing with the government that we don't necessarily trust. So I think that the administration is scrambling in any way possible and looking at the scary ghost guns and the kits and the 80% lowers and all this 3D printed guns. These are all, loopholes. And what are loopholes? Loopholes are freedom finding a way. I think they would be incredibly saccharine to sit here and say, they've solved all the world's problems with this, because, again, we got to draw the line. We're going to keep moving the goalpost. At what point is it going to be? Is it a 1% lower? Is it a 15% lower? Is it a 75% lower? Where are we going to end up on this? And I think they're just freaking out because it's an expression of freedom. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I remember talking to you on the Bullet, again, about an hour ago, and making the statement, I have somewhere between 1 and 75 or more pre-1968 firearms that I acquired simply because they don't have serial numbers and there's no way for the government to know that I have or how many I have. And there are a lot of people like me that the attraction for the pre-1968 firearms is they cannot be tracked.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole thing with the serial. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to say, Paul, now they might have an idea.
Well, and I said this on the Bullet. There's at least one. Is there one? Is there 5? Is there 75? Is there more? I don't remember.
See, that's the advantage of having a stroke.
Yeah.
The point.
Oh, too soon.
Too soon? Too soon? Well, it's been a year.
Yeah.
It's been a year. Okay, so
a year in one day.
You're in a day.
Not yet.
Exactly. I'm exactly on it to the minute. But think of that. We have, 6 decades of firearms that were created before serial numbers were required.
More than that, Rob.
Semi-autos.
Yeah.
I'm using the 1911 as kind of a benchmark.
Okay.
So six years after the 1911 entered the domain of being a mil-spec firearm, and everybody could make it. What? There are tens of millions of unserialized firearms out there. I wondered, in fact, if they were using those pre-production firearms or pre-serialized firearms to pad their ghost gun numbers.
We get
that's also like the obliterated numbers, these scratched off numbers. So I think that the statistics are also, inauthentic, because there's no distinction to say, well, a ghost gun is a gun that doesn't have a serial number. We can make a ghost gun if we get a Dremel and grind off the serial number. It's very simple. I'm very fascinated by their fixation with the serial number, as if, well, we can't trace it. You really can't trace it anyhow, like just the serial number. It's not like because it has a serial number, okay, we could try to trace it, but private sales and all the other ways, you have your point of sale states like New Jersey that has an actual registry. Okay, so there's a registry here for handguns, but there isn't for long guns, and there's plenty of long guns that were sold prior to the law change privately that didn't go through an FFL. So there was no 4473. There was a certificate of eligibility. There's just nuance. Charlie, like, you could talk about the certificate of, or what is it, a registration of the transaction, but not the actual firearm?
This is a Jedi mind trick in Massachusetts. We don't have gun registration. We have transfer registration. And transfer registration is, if I give a gun to someone else, they have to have a license to have it because it's occupied territory. And I have to let the state know through the portal, through a transfer registration, to let the state know that I'm giving a gun to someone else. I have a license. Here's my information. Here's another person that wants a gun. They have a gun license. I have to let the state know that I'm giving them a gun. But if you moved here, God forbid that Paul walks under a ladder and breaks a mirror and has to move here to occupied territory, he can get a license, an LTC, a license to carry, and he can possess all the firearms he has. He doesn't have to let Massachusetts know he has any of those until he transfers one of his South Dakota guns to me.
Yeah, and it's insane because, like, New Jersey, for example, they wanted to push a law that it requires people moving from out of state into state to register all of their firearms. And they were referring to this as some sort of a freedom loophole. This is just somebody trying to move into this godforsaken state for whatever reason, and they happen to have firearms. Like, we need to register their firearms because they're going to come to Jersey with firearms with bad intent. They're going to move here, or maybe live someplace else, come across the river, do their criminaling, and then go back, or just live in the cities like we have. Like, so all of it's absurd. The serial number thing it's all crazy to me.
John, you listened to a lot of the word salad today. I could only put up with it for about 5 minutes. Do you think, who was it designed for? Who was the intended audience of that theater? I have the feeling that it was aimed at the media to generate some headlines for headline surfing and low information voters.
Well, absolutely. So you could just pull those sound bites, and there's like plenty of sound bites that they could pull. They sound good if you pull them and cherry pick them, but if you string them all together, it's not an intelligible presser. It's like, well, these guns without serial numbers, and we can't trace them, and they're dangerous because we can't trace them, and we have to trace them. Why? The person's not any more or less dead if they were shot with a firearm that has a serial number or does it? And that was the point we were talking about. If somebody got stabbed to death, are we going to feel, more or less worse for that person because they weren't shot? I mean, it's crazy. And I agree with you 100%. Low information voters, people in their camp and their base, hashtag we're doing something, and the media.
There you go.
Yeah. You get this one in quick. George Geller says, well, we know nobody ever is injured by a registered firearm. Same as in California. You're perfectly safe if attacked by someone with a gun that is a 10-round or less magazine. And Big John 410 said, Maryland is the same as New Jersey for the uninformed who moved there.
Yes.
Except you guys got good crab cakes, right?
Do we need to promote more of those YouTube videos where a guy takes a piece of galvanized PVC pipe, drills a hole in one end, glues a nail in one end, and goes, "Oh, look, a slam fire shotgun. What's it take? About $10 a parts?"
Zip guns, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. When I hear the term homemade firearm, and obviously we prefer this over ghost gun because this is what they are. But when I hear homemade firearm, Rob, what you just mentioned is what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of an 80% lower, a P80 where someone builds their own from a kit or with all of the pieces. When I hear homemade, I see duct tape and wood and nails and something that's just some prison gun that somebody builds and they make a shank out of a toothbrush. You know what I mean? That's what I hear.
Well, but Charlie, the guys who do for decades, the guys who pursued the extremes of precision were also using what were effectively homemade firearms. Robyn, you've shot out at 1,000 yards?
Mm-hmm.
Before, that used to be the domain of a guy who went, I know that's the best we can get from industry, but I got some things I want to try that I think will make it better. And they dragged industry along behind them because they got so good. So
yeah, you're right. Private firearms have always been better than military-issued firearms. So when people talk about the danger of military-issued firearms, but it goes back to what John was saying, if in some of those statements that he was sharing with us, that if it really is about the time or duration that someone puts into it or the effort or expense that someone puts into it, okay, so if somebody takes that PVC pipe and it takes them 8 hours to glue that nail in the back of the, that's ridiculous. That's not a true measurer. So all of it is just complete theater.
It is.
Especially if you want the glue to cure the whole amount, Go ahead,
right. Don't use the red Loctite. Use the blue Loctite.
This is what the instructions say. So,
all right, a Gorilla Glue might not cut it.
I love Dana's comment. Ghost guns are made by the Casper Arms Manufacturing Company.
Yes, Dana, exactly. The friendly ghost gun, right?
Oh, and George wants to know: does Home Depot need to be an FFL now? You know what? If they sell shovels, yes, because we've seen the video where you take that shovel, turn it into a lower for an AK. You bet.
Iron pipe, yeah. I think those are gun barrels.
Yeah, or at least shotguns. Yes.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to serialize all the nails because they're firing pins.
It's
or at least
that was for you, Charlie.
Thanks. So here's some welcome to the Commonwealth stuff. You do not have to have a permit to get a 22 nail gun, and you can shoot a 22 nail gun. It's the same as a 22, except it's a nail instead of a bullet. It goes into like 2 inches of concrete, which will, I'm going to say, probably go through someone's skull.
Yes.
And you can get that at Home Depot, and you don't need a permit for it. I've actually done this. There was a place that was doing some construction near me, and they had some 22 nail guns there. And I picked up the shell cases, and I used to show them in class and say, "Here's a 22 shell case. This is illegal to have without a permit. Here's a 22 nail gun shell case. You can totally have this. It's the same thing, except there's some crimping on the 22 nail gun." That's it. They're like, really? I'm like, absolutely. 2 years of jail time for an ammunition component without a permit in the Commonwealth.
Well,
That's some common sense legislation right there, Charlie.
there it is. And
I know. I'm gonna propose that we change the state motto from Massachusetts to the Bay State to Massachusetts. Hey, at least we're not New Jersey.
Hey, we're down at the bottom of the hour. What I want to do, John, could you hang out for one more segment with us, man?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk with John about Hawaii. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back right after we hear from CNJFO.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the second interview segment with John Petrolino. This is the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. There's John. John, I want to talk with you. We talked a little bit about this on the bullet. I want to talk about a story you wrote about an officer in the Navy in Hawaii. This guy was doing everything by the book, as you would expect a Navy officer to do. He was stationed in Hawaii, wanted to bring his firearms with him to where he was stationed in Hawaii, and up there you have to be licensed to be a firearms owner. So he's going through the licensing process. Apparently, when he was going through the licensing process, they asked, have you been treated for a mental illness? And when it came up that he had seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist, he'd seen somebody in the Navy for homesickness, Hawaii went, oh my God, no, you can't have a license for a firearm. You've got to prove to us that you're not a psycho first. Am I getting your story pretty straight there, man?
Yes. The thing, Hawaii never ceases to amaze me. They continually show up in the pages of AmmoLand, Bearing Arms, every place that I'm writing. I constantly have a steady flow of material about Hawaii. And this one case in particular, what is really interesting about it is because they're saying that this individual did seek some sort of mental health help. And what they're doing is they're putting the burden on the individual to prove that they have eligibility. And, you know, if you look at this in our criminal world, criminals are innocent until proven guilty. But in this case, you have somebody that's not a criminal, but they're being treated like a criminal because they sought help. And there's a couple of points that I like to make about this. Is somebody that is seeking some sort of talk therapy or guidance or whatever it may have been, somebody that is that much of a threat to society if they're actually asking for some help? And that's a good question to ponder. Number two, and this is probably, you know, the top of the heap, it should be always, all day, every day, on the state or on the government or the issuing authority, whomever, to prove the ineligibility. It shouldn't be the other way around. And if we have our standard bar, go ahead, Rob.
Not only are you right, John, but a judge ruled that way in Florida, I believe. Are you thinking of the same case I am? The guy had some out-of-state legal issue. Was it in
New
Pennsylvania?
York or something like that.
yeah, the Northeast here, and he's down in Florida, and they said, "Oh, we can't prove it's you. The person has the same name. You prove that wasn't you." And the judge said, "Can't do it. Doesn't work that way. The burden is on the state to prove that the individual is ineligible." Now, they can ask for records. Gotcha. John, is part of the problem that you and I could never know what would be ineligible because the state's never told us what the standards are?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. So if you have a clear-cut statute, like so your federal statute is if you were adjudicated mentally defective, correct, or something like that. But like in the case of a state like Florida, that's a point of contact state. New Jersey, point of contact state. So you're using the state, and I think Hawaii may be as well. They're certainly acting that way. They have a permitting system. So when you go to purchase a firearm in Florida and New Jersey, which are two very opposite types of states, I think we can all agree to that, the state acts as the middleman, the liaison between the NICS system and the purchase of the firearm, and how much stuff can get fouled up in between in that process. Just like this person that was looking to purchase a firearm, this is, well, there's something that happened in New York with somebody with the same name, and yes, you are correct. The court said, no, this is not on the individual. You need to prove this, and this guy shouldn't have to be able to produce any documentation at all, and that's the way I feel about it. No, you show me the money, right? Show me the money. You're the one who's taking away my rights. This is your responsibility, not mine.
Dana over on the YouTube side says it's instances like this that keeps gun owners from seeking counseling when they need help.
Absolutely.
Charlie,
That's
you were
dangerous. Go ahead.
Charlie, you were going to say something.
I was thinking this when we were talking about the ghost guns. It parlays right into it. So people don't want, or the government wants gun to have serial numbers on them so they can keep track of them. All of the Americans have something to keep track of us, and it's called a serial number. And the government can't keep track of the people, but they want to keep track of these items. So if you're this person that has the same name as a criminal, can't you just produce your social security number and say, hey, this is my social security number. I have the same name. I'm not the criminal. Here's my social security number.
Yeah. But you see, that would make things, that would make sense. And that would make things easy. And they couldn't step on inside our lives that way.
Was it John Lott who said lots of people have the same name? Charlie Cook. And was the goal of the system to generate false claims that said everybody with the name Charlie Cook, one of them's a criminal, all of you lose your rights? Is that a fault or a feature?
Well, I think if we look at the NICS system, I mean, they hurried it along, and I feel like they were very, they created a weighty goal for themselves when they passed this legislation. What was it, 1991?
Yeah.
And they were right at the nick of time were able to get the system up and allegedly running. And even still, there was litigation involving the sheriffs and the local, issuing authorities that were not interested in doing the federal government's work on vetting people.
Yeah. All right. I'm just noted. Apparently, Facebook says we're live. I'm not buying it because we've had no comments, and it shows we don't have any viewers. And I'm not buying that because,
right?
We always have viewers. So Facebook is screwing up. So don't know what's going on, but there is something going on. I do want to get one more, and John, one more story of yours I want to cover while I've got you on, and that's this New York Times story that I had for the bullet that we didn't have time to get to today, and they are, how do I put this? They're almost ready to put the jackboots on, man. They are going over the top.
Was this the Los Angeles Times piece talking about the lists? That's the one, yeah.
Yes.
So that is, it's interesting. So the Los Angeles Times was swooning over California's system that they have with their lists. They love them some lists, and the punctuation to this story is you need to be incredibly weary of people or entities or governments that love lists. So the LA Times was talking about how this list in California enabled the authorities to go in and seize all of these firearms from these ineligible people. And if we didn't have this list, they wouldn't have been able to go and seize the firearms from the bad guys that had the firearms, right? So what they don't talk about, though, is to end up on that list is like a number of different ways. And one of them is red flag laws. So they have the gun violence restraining orders in California. That's what they call them out there. And there's a dude that's running for sheriff under the GOP ticket in San Diego. And this dude runs around teaching other jurisdictions and entities how to inflict these red flag confiscation orders on people and using them as part of regular police work. And they were touting how California and I think San Diego County, it might have been, some of the most amount used of these gun violence restraining orders. Like, this is a point of pride. And what they were doing is, instead of using the normal policing, like, hey, this person's dangerous, you can take their firearms from them if they're in immediate danger, they're executing these restraining orders on them. Well, since they could be done ex parte, my question to the Los Angeles Times and their wonderful list is, all of these guns that were seized were these part of orders that were ex parte, and then they end up on the list, and since they're on the list, the firearms are then seized without the person knowing that they were ineligible because somebody basically swatted them.
Yeah. And ex-wives would never do that, would they, Alec Baldwin?
Or ex-husbands. It works always.
I'm sorry.
Always.
Oh. Yeah. Ouch. My bad.
Oh.
But, so that whole thing with the Los Angeles Times, and they're lauding the system. It says, well, let's look at what the system really is. And then they talked about some of the numbers of firearms that were actually returned, people that were removed from the list because they either died or their ineligible status made them eligible. And they're talking about the number of people that ended up getting removed from the list. And then the number of people that end up on the list far eclipses the number of people that get removed from the list. Well, if they're that dangerous, and this is such a great system, right?
Right, because they're not really removed from the list. They're just placed on another list.
Right.
You're never off the list.
What bothers me is the fictional notion that, we're safe now. Yeah, criminals don't have guns because we have a list. Oh, right. Boy, you need to get out more. Please.
And they said the big fault is, well, this is only the people that legally bought firearms. And, well, no, duh. These are the people that are actually law-abiding citizens that got fouled up somewhere. And since it's California, they probably were jaywalking, and that's how they ended up on the list.
Yeah. This just way out of left field here, but believe it or not, there was actually somebody in my hometown of Sioux Falls. It made the news there was somebody here that actually got a jaywalking ticket. And it's so rare here that it actually made the news.
That's a beautiful thing, Paul. That's big news. I got to applaud you and your municipality. Whatever you've got going on, it's a good thing. If jaywalking made it onto the nightly news.
Well, isn't there anything else going on out there?
But the thing is, now we've got real crime here too. There are robberies. There is real crime, but nobody ever gets a jaywalking ticket. And I seen that and I thought, really?
How did you do that?
Yeah.
What'd you have to do? Pee on the hood of the cop car to get the jaywalking ticket?
Well, he had to cross South Dakota's busiest street with a shopping cart, and not use a crosswalk. And there was anyway.
He got caught because one of the wheels was going like slowing him down. That's how he got caught.
It had the shakes.
There you go. All right. Well, we are up against the end of the segment again. John, thanks so much for not only joining me here, but joining me on the bullet. I've taken just a whole bunch of your time today, man.
It's great. Thank you so much for having me, Paul. Thank you, Charlie, Rob, and Robyn. It's great to be with you, and anytime.
All right, folks, we're going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our news segment. Guess what? We're not done talking about Washington, D.C. We'll be back after we hear from JPFO. We'll do that right now. Hang on, right back, right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
Welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. One thing I wanted to come across with real quick as we come out of here and into the news segment, and we didn't talk about it that much during John Petrolino's interview, but I do want to stress it here. The Second Amendment Foundation's motto, their catchphrase is winning firearms freedoms one lawsuit at a time. I have not spoken to anybody in Washington State today. I have not spoken to Alan or anybody in leadership at SAF. However, I would be absolutely stunned if there aren't lawsuits in the very near future with what has happened at the White House today. To be quite frank, what Biden has done, he cannot do. Biden cannot make law. The executive branch executes the law. The Congress passes and makes the law. The executive branch does not make the law. First of all, I would encourage you, tune into the Bullet. I'll have more clips throughout the week that I'll be airing of that talk. And I hope in the very near future to have Alan on either the Bullet during the week or the weekend, or possibly next Monday evening on Polite Society. No, actually, next Monday evening will not be Alan. I've already got that booked. That's going to be Holly Sullivan from Connecticut Citizens Defense League will be next Monday's guest. So, we didn't talk a whole lot last week when we were on because it had just happened. We were kind of doing the 72-hour thing. Let's talk about Sacramento. Last week when we were on the air, it had just happened the previous day. 2 a.m. Sunday morning, bars are letting out, and at least 5 people who were gangbangers decided it was a good time to go shooting at each other. 6 people are dead, at least a dozen injured, And one of the gangbangers had a Glock that was converted to full auto. And how do I put this? Murder is illegal in every state in the Union, certainly illegal in California. Having a full auto firearm that is not got a tax stamp and is made after 1987 is not legal in every state. That's a federal law. And indiscriminately firing, I'm pretty sure, is against California law. So now they're asking for all kinds of new laws, and the person that had the fully automatic, he'd gotten released from prison 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks before, or less than a few months before he was in this situation, and he was released years early on a 10-year sentence. Help me out, guys. They're trying to make what was already super duper illegal even more illegal.
Can I argue with you, Paul?
Yeah.
You say like that's what they want to do. That's what they want to talk about. They don't care whether they accomplish it. This is a distraction. Guns are the excuse. They can't admit that California is such a messed up political situation. They don't have the money to hold felons in prison. Nor can they admit to alienate large segments of the criminal class. They need to distract our low information voters from the violent failures in Democrat states and Democrat cities. Blaming guns is the best bet they have for this theater. It's one of those, look over there, and felons released from prison, they're not our fault. Nothing to see here. Move along. Move along. These aren't the felons you're looking for. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're looking for someone to blame, and it needs to be the state of California, 100%. The policies that are going on there are the reasons why this guy got out.
Yeah. What burns me up is I'm surprised the victims don't scream that. I mean, with all due respect, we're not that smart. If we can think of this, I would think the victim and their lawyers would say, why the hell did you leave those felons on the street?
Well, and Rob, you were on the weekend edition of The Bullet with me, and you did a great job, and we tied this to the shooting just a few months ago.
Week before.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you got me started on that, where an illegal alien going through a crisis had a gun illegally, told the world he was going to do it, and then murdered his daughters himself and the legally mandated chaperone that was visiting his legally mandated family visit. Yeah.
Also in California, correct?
Oh, yeah, within blocks of where this one.
Yes.
Yeah. Shocking.
Yes.
But don't you think some of it has to do, and the reason why people haven't asked more of the why questions is because they were all gang members. I think that everyone kind of has this, gang members are going to do gang member things, and that's just part of that culture as opposed to lumping it in with law-abiding gun owners. So I think that part of the rhetoric of it is the fact that they were all had rap sheets, that a lot of people involved in this probably should have still been in prison. And so there's a lot of finger pointing that isn't going to point because gang members are going to do what gang members do.
Yeah. Get a couple comments in here quick, if I could.
So in the prior case, he was an illegal alien. He was a domestic abuser. He'd come out and threatened his wife, and then he'd gotten in a fight with the cop and the EMTs that were treating him because he had a DUI, and they said, man, are you going to make it to the hospital? You're so intoxicated.
You get a couple comments in here. Dana says, Diane Feinstein thinks California's gun laws should be federalized, but we see what a failure it is. Los Angeles had 2 dead and multiple injured today. And then Charlie Chambers wants to know, Nebraska 26th and Georgia signs into law on Tuesday. I got word today. I heard from
John
Trish Harold in Nebraska. It has failed in Nebraska. Nebraska will not get permitless carry this year. They're going to have to try again in January. We will be having her on in the very near future. We are going to specifically talk about senators in Nebraska that said they were going to support it and then decided not so much. We're going to be talking about specific senators and outing them so that Nebraska voters know who they need to not send back to the unicameral this year. And we'll have that. And we'll have Trish on before the primaries.
But it is good that Georgia will sign it.
Going back to the California thing, the revolving door of justice is exhausting. Letting these people out again and again and again, and accepting that it's, criminals do what criminals do. It's, I don't want to say that, LA is not Chicago, but
yes, it is.
I get it. Right. It's not yet. They're working hard. It's
trying to get criminal justice reform in California has been a decades-long thing. I don't know if you guys know, but in 1991, it was, my cousin was murdered in California. He was murdered with a screwdriver. He was at a restaurant, and he was stabbed by a gang member with a screwdriver. So not everything hurts a family has to have a projectile. Screwdrivers used the wrong way are the same way, and my family sought justice for a really long time through the state of California, and that person was protected by a number of different groups, advocacy groups, street groups, changing names, aliases, all kinds of things, trying to get him out of the hands of justice. So it's been a long time problem, and there's a lot of people going after it, but the state of California has the funds, is the most funded correctional facility system, and it needs to just be completely trashed and started over, because it's leaving families in its wake left and right.
I know we have a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers in California, and I myself Rob used to be a California resident. I was a California resident 23 years ago. However, I'm becoming pro-earthquake. I'm becoming,
Right. I'm praying for the meteor 2024 to crash.
We need smart people to step up to the table and make some things happen that are actually serving the people of California.
Yeah. And by earth, I don't want the whole state, the whole 70s thing where the state gets pushed off into the Pacific, but if they could just the state house, while it's in session.
I was going to say real quick, I remember in the late 1970s when everyone's like, oh, the California's going to slip into the ocean. You guys remember all this talk?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. No such luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all moved here to Texas.
Sorry.
All right. Well, let's do this. I want to keep this thing kind of half on track. We've got a couple DGUs we need to get to. So how about we hear from our good folks down there at the Complete Combatant, and then we're going to talk about defensive gun uses. And we will be right back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
And welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliation. Who wants to take this first one out of Akron?
Oh, I'll do this. I covered this. This is so much fun.
Okay.
7:30 in the morning, and a teen picked the wrong house to break into. 74-year-old man who asked Fox 8 from Cleveland not to be identified, but instead to use his nickname. They call him Lurch. Well, Lurch was at home and opened fire as the teen came crashing through his front glass door. The 16-year-old then retreats and rolls down the basement steps. There he grabs a shovel. Lurch shoots him again. The teen did then decide not to climb the stairs. Lurch kept an eye on him, called police. As far as I know, I hit him 3 times, close quote. Most would agree that within reason, someone has a right to defend themselves. So in that someone broke into his house, in that he's confronted with an unknown person, with an unknown motive, all those things will be taken into consideration. Close quote, Lieutenant Michael Miller, spokesperson for the Akron police. Why'd the teen pick this house? Lurch thinks it's because his truck's in the shop and not in the driveway, and therefore he thought no one was home. To quote Lurch, "Fooled him, didn't I?" Close quote. He says he always keeps a firearm close by because he's been shot several times and his home has been broken into. Paul, you've got some opinions here.
The way this is written up in the local media, the gentleman who ended up defending his home was making light of it.
Right.
And first of all, if you in my opinion, if you have to use a firearm, no matter the outcome, I don't think it's a great idea for you to talk to the media. If you let an attorney do that for you, you're going to need one anyway. Let your attorney do that for you. If this kid survives and decides that he needs some money, guess what? There's an old man that's making light of this. And there's a hungry attorney around, and there's a homeowner's and there's a homeowner's insurance policy. Guess what the attorney's going to go for?
And you're exactly right. It's the difference between criminal behavior and civil behavior. So, or a civil suit. That's what you're worried about. Yeah. And maybe it's just the 74-year-old man going, go ahead, try. I don't have that many years left anyway. But still.
Yeah, but you got money, dude.
Maybe.
I'm wondering if he picked up an assault shovel or just a regular shovel.
Before or after he made it into that lower receiver for the AK?
Right. Given, what do they call it? Constructive assembly. Yeah, he had all the parts he needed for an AK down there.
There you go. I've seen someone turn a shovel into a banjo as well as an AK. So, you know.
Oh, that's even worse.
Wait till you hear him play it.
Oh!
You know, I mean, the good thing is the guy's at home. He's been broke into before. His home's been broke into before, and he keeps a gun nearby. So God bless him. He's, he's getting on in the years and knows that it might be a good idea to, bathrobe on, gun on.
But it does make me wonder at what point he heard the teen coming up to the door. If he saw him, could he see him through the glass door? Could he, was there time to call 911? Could he turn the porch light on to discourage the kid? Maybe there's some other steps he could have taken before it came to this point.
And what we don't know, because these news stories are always incomplete, Robyn, maybe he did exactly that. We just don't know. But yeah. I'm glad you brought it up because we want to.
Yeah. I hope this guy did everything he possibly could to have this, and that the firing was absolutely their last resort. And he was just, when it got to the media, it's, oh, here's my 15 minutes of fame. I'm going to ham it up.
Right.
I hope that's the case. All right. Let's see here. Muskogee. Who wants this one?
I will take it.
Okay, Charlie, you're going to be an Okie?
I'm going to be an Okie dokie from Muskogee, Oklahoma. Merle Haggard sang about being an Okie from Muskogee, but this self-defense story reminds me more of Waylon Jennings singing about the good old boys. You remember if you remember the Dukes of Hazzard, you will remember that Bo and Lou Duke were banned from firearms, so they used a bow and arrow in its place. Police had dispatched to the Muskogee home several times over the past month due to a 33-year-old suspect harassing the resident. This time, the call was from a report of a person trying to break in. When they arrived, they found a back patio glass door was broken. Police found the intruder with an arrow entering his body under his arm. It is definitely pretty bizarre and not something that you hear about very often, said the Muskogee police officer, Lynn Hamlin. Quote, we had several homicides in these 15 years, but none of them were with a bow and none of them were where a bow and arrow had been the weapon that was used, end quote. This is pretty bizarre. It ended this way, Hamlin said. My biggest problem would be that what the dispute was over. He was trespassing here, yet he was coming back. Both the victim and the suspect have criminal records, but the homeowners appear to have been for nonviolent drug offenses and DUI. The suspect had a long list of violent charges and or convictions on his record. While the preferred self-defense tool is a firearm, if you are banned from owning one, a bow and arrow can work just fine. I think this is a great story. I went through a stage when I had a license to carry, but I had restrictions on my license, and I couldn't carry a firearm. And I got into archery, and I wanted to carry a self-defense bow and arrow in the store, and I wanted to have a quiver and a bow over my shoulder, and I figured people would see me in the aisle of the store and get out of my way, which is, of course, the desired result.
You know, the first season or two I did watch, what was that, The Walking Dead, and mm-hmm. I thought at one time, maybe a crossbow, but never seriously,
Right. Real quick, before Rob chimes in, real quick, it really just goes to show us the mind is the weapon and everything else is a tool.
Charlie, didn't you mention that there were certain types of black powder firearms that even prohibited persons can use?
Oh, yes. Here in the Commonwealth, if you have a primitive firearm, which is a muzzle loader, you can, this is welcome to the Commonwealth stuff, Rob, you can purchase a muzzle loading rifle. You cannot purchase powder, but you can possess powder.
So somebody can give it to you?
I tell everyone when I'm doing a home firearm safety class, I tell them this. They give me the same. They give me the look like that's Nipper, the dog.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I say, listen, there's a farm store 8 miles from here. I said they sell muzzleloaders and ammunition and hunting gear and farm equipment. And I said you can go in there and you can buy a muzzleloader without a permit, but you can't buy the black powder. I can buy the powder for you, and I can give it to you in the parking lot, and it's all perfectly fine. And in the years that I've been teaching, no one has taken me up on this, but I would love that.
Okay.
I think they're tired of hearing me. I think they're tired of hearing me talk. They just want to get the hell out, Yeah, that's probably what it is. But you don't have to have a permit for a muzzleloader here in the Commonwealth.
So, muzzleloader. So, are we talk? What kind of firing mechanism are we talking? Then are we talking?
You can have a contemporary muzzleloader, right? You can have like a Thompson Center or something, and that's fine. You can have, a Kentucky rifle, and that's fine. I have I think it's a Connecticut Valley Arms, a CVA 45 caliber muzzle-loading Kentucky rifle that I don't think has ever been fired, but no permit needed for that.
And these don't have to be black powder. They can be modern. I've seen some muzzle loaders, and they're hunters that want to be able to take advantage of primitive weapon system, and I'm going, primitive my backside. That thing looks like a space gun, AR inline. Wow. No, it's not primitive at all.
Right. Well, it's if it's a muzzleloader, they consider it a primitive firearm here. You have to have, if you're going to hunt with it, you have to have besides a hunting permit, you have to have a primitive weapon stamp to hunt with it. I used to back when I was a newbie into the firearms, I would be a good little doobie, and I would donate time to the Gun Owners Action League and go sit at the fishing, hunting, outdoor show, and I'd sit at the booth and talk to people and hand out flyers and stuff. And a guy came over. And I was floored. Like, this was beyond my comprehension at the time. But a guy came over. He's like, yeah, I'm divorced. I went through a bad breakup and a bad divorce. My wife, claimed this and this and this. And I had my gun license taken away, and I had all my firearms taken away from me. And I'm like, well, what's in your hand? He's like, it's a 50 caliber muzzleloader. And I'm like, can't you shoot her with that too? And he's like, yeah, that'll be fine. All right, cool, man.
All right.
Welcome to the comment.
There you go. Dana says he can get 3 shots a minute with his 1853 Enfield.
There we go.
So, all right, let's do this. Let's take our last break. And I've been broadcasting now for over 2 hours, so I'm getting really ready to shut this down. Let's take our last break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we've been doing in media and what's coming up in media. And then we'll shut everything down. Hang on, everybody. We'll be right back right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong-house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
Everybody, welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Let's go ahead and get started. And Rob, what's been going on, or what have you got coming up, either with Slow Facts or with Self-Defense Gun Stories? What's going on in the Rob Morse media world, man?
The media, the Rob Morse media empire?
Yes.
Thank you, John Anderson, for that. Tomorrow I get to interview Tony Simon again. He's always fun. Robyn was just last week. Thank you so much. We've all had our plans go astray, and I don't think that creating a surge in gun ownership and a political shift away from gun control was what George Soros had in mind when he urged the Philadelphia District Attorney, to release criminals back on the streets. That article is called Things Often Don't Go as Planned, Philadelphia edition. We talked about it a little bit here. We saw shocking murders in California, and then anti-gun Democrats blamed the gun. The reason is because telling the truth would offend too many of the Democrats' special interests. That article is called Democrat Politicians Lie About Murder Because the Truth is Politically Expensive. Just today, President Biden said guns are causing crime. That leaves the obvious question, why didn't guns cause crime earlier, but only in the 2 years after Joe Biden took office? And why particularly in Democrat-controlled cities? That article is called What Biden Didn't Tell You and Your Friends Don't Know About Guns and Serial Numbers. All that's at slowfacts.wordpress.com. My articles are picked up at Clash Daily and at AmmoLand. Robyn, tell us what you've been writing about.
Well, unfortunately, my blog is just paused for a moment while I get through our Girl in the Gun National Conference, but I'm sure after I see all the training going on and hear everything that all the ladies are experiencing, I'm going to have a lot to write about then. We'll definitely have our annual report of the hottest guns and gear that everyone brought with them to training, so we can kind of track that trend about brands and makes and models that ladies are preferring across the market. And I did, for Charlie, I'm going to show you, this week I got a rockin' tattoo. So that's what I did in my non-writing time.
Wow.
Charlie, what about you? What are you up to?
Well, I did not get any tattoos. I have episode 143 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie coming out tomorrow. Toby Leary is the co-owner from Cape Gun Works in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and he is my passenger in the shotgun seat. I've actually known Toby and the other owner, Brendan, since 2013 when we did a combat focus shooting class together. And not long after them, I became a Utah instructor and asked them if I could teach the Utah class, and I've been teaching Utah classes at Cape Gun Works since probably 2013 or 2014. So I get a chance to talk with Toby about all the things that he's doing, which is pretty fun. I have, what else do I have here? I've lined up some shows for some new guests. I filmed a show this past weekend. I got another show I'm going to be filming in the next couple weeks, maybe 2 shows I'm filming. And I made a video this past Friday for AmmoLand News talking about the ATS war on shocking privately made firearms. And that's on AmmoLand News and on the AmmoLand News YouTube channel. Paul, wrap it up for us, sir.
Well, what I want to plug is what's coming up this coming Saturday. And that is, again, I need to figure out a way to get Tony Simon out of his shell. He's coming up. He's coming up this weekend on the weekend edition of the Bullet. Him and Beth Alcazar are going to be on. And Beth Alcazar, another one. I need to get these two to be able to talk a little bit. I'm really looking forward to I have a bunch of fun when Tony's on and when Beth is on. So I haven't filled out. Usually I get 3 people on with me. And kudos to you, Rob, because usually you did last weekend. You did the work of 3 people all by yourself. So.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm going to have Beth and Tony and probably one other person on with me this coming weekend for the weekend edition of the Bullet. I'm really looking forward to that. That is the same place where you're catching this at noon Central Time on Saturday. So that's what I want to plug. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks for tagging along. Podcast listeners, God bless you. We are continuing to grow. Thanks for sharing the show. Thanks for tuning in. Live viewers, thank you for commenting and keeping the show rolling. You really do help me out tremendously. That's going to do it. Let me go back over to show notes because I have something that I cannot say unless I read it. And that's not it. Now, where is it? Come on. Where is it? That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank John Petrolino for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robyn, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, the recording is done. I'm going to go ahead and shut streams down. Again, thanks everybody for watching. Not much of a post show today. We'll catch you next week. For those of you that did tune in for PS